Hi, Amy Shaw here. It is February 11th today, and I am in my car again. I know maybe it seems a little weird. I have a 20-year-old son who has a lot of needs, and so this is my full-time job pretty much. Driving really isn't on the horizon for him, so I drive him to all of his appointments, and excuse me, some of them are not appointments that he needs me to be there with him, so I sit in my car, which gives me like big blocks of time, and I really appreciate that because I try to do productive things with that time. So I'm in my car again. I'd really like to actually be able to do this outside, but I am in a parking lot, and although there's just beautiful trees all around me, there's also people pulling in and out and getting in and out of their cars, and underneath the trees is this weird sort of like scrubby, bushy stuff. It's not really grass. It's not something I'd want to sit on. It doesn't look very comfortable. And there's not really anywhere else to sit besides the roads right here is really busy. So anyway, I'm just staying in my car for now. People will really think I'm weird if I'm out there recording myself, especially some of the things I want to talk about. So today, what's really, really on my mind is this idea of the wounded healer. I think a lot of people are sort of resonating or have resonated with the archetype of the wounded healer. And of course, Chiron, the centaur in Greek mythology, is the epitome of the wounded healer. Right? But Chiron was unable to actually heal himself, so he gave up his immortality, which is an interesting sort of thing. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on. But what I want to say is the wounded healer is also sort of... Oh, look at that. A leaf just flew down. Oh, another one. I got my sunroof open. The wounded healer is also sort of the foundation or the crux of shamanism. And that's gaining so much popularity lately. The last 5 years, I think we've really seen a resurgence, and it continues to grow. More and more people are becoming interested in shamanism and are feeling a call into shamanism. So for those of us that have this path of the wounded healer, I want to talk about that a little bit. Now, in shamanism... well, no, let me just start from the beginning, really. So we go through things in life that are really hard, and everybody has their own sort of experience of wounding. And through that process of healing through that and working through that, which is necessary. And the reason it's necessary is because people that come to the healer to seek healing are also themselves wounded on many different levels. And so, although the power of healing does come from a spiritual realm and through us, it's channeled through us, it isn't actually our own power in a sense. It does belong to us in a higher sense. And so when people come to us for healing as healers, we do need to have a whole repertoire of experience with healing ourselves. Understanding ourselves, understanding wounding, understanding patterns, and so in that sense, any modality of healing is just a sort of container that allows us to channel in our ego consciousness healing. So being wounded is not absolutely necessary as being a healer, but it's really, really important to do depth healing, that you have some level of experience and processing with that. And I think that people that are called into healing professions, whatever that is, tend to be so because they have been wounded or they identify with wounding. Now, when I say identify, and that's really the key thing, is that to me, okay, so let's flip this a minute. If Chiron was the wounded healer, then the Christ consciousness is the healer wounded. So, but it's not, it seems like it's a reverse thing, wounded healer, healer wounded. In actuality, it's really not, because Christ came in his divinity and he became wounded from his divinity. And so in that sense, we are like Christ, because although we believe that our woundings is what led to the healing, in actuality, as our life path was laid out before we even incarnated, we came divine. And so in our divinity, we also were wounded. The difference is that, obviously Christ was in his full consciousness connected to source, and we are in ego. And so I really like how Brene Brown, I'm still reading through her book, Rising Strong, and she talks in there about wounding, emotional wounding. She calls it chandeliering. She said she got the term from her husband, who's a pediatrician. And she describes an incident, where, a friend of the daughter's was in so much pain, from a sports injury that he could barely even touch the wound. And she was like jumping out of her skin, jumping up towards the chandeliers, when the pain's that bad. And then she relates it to an emotional pain. That what happens is that when we're wounded and we're in so much emotional pain, we become very sort of ego reactive, defensive, guarded, and then she kind of goes off to talk about that in terms of people that are in positions of power and whatnot. But how I want to focus that today is in terms of healers. It's very hard to be a healer if you're in a very defensive sort of position, and constantly reacting to people and being triggered by people because of your own ego. So really, in a sense, all the healing that has to be done is working through the wounding, releasing, taking in the medicine, integrating, processing, and releasing, so that you become as clear in your field as possible, so that when people are coming to you, your channel isn't sort of like convoluted and muddied up, and it allows you to actually have that flow come and be a much more effective thing. You become a more of an empty vessel and a more effective tool for the healing. So what I want to say is that at some point, a wounded healer may come to actually consciously identify with the archetype of wounded healer. And then as you progress in your own journey and evolution, there will come a point where it's actually necessary to completely let go of the concept of wounding and healing equally, because both of these things, the person that needs to experience themselves as wounded and also the person that needs to experience themselves as healer, are ego identities. And as we evolve in our consciousness and move beyond this 3D and even 4D realm into the higher realms, we're all healers and we're all wounded in a sense, but it isn't necessary to even really identify ourselves as that. So I know that that's really confusing, because we do really sort of live in this 3D reality where, if somebody's experiencing something right now in this moment, whether it's, say like cancer or a cold or, what have you. But I think the important thing to remember is that the moment that the soul exits the body, there's an instant healing that occurs. So this experience of yourself right now in this, chronological, linear sort of 3D reality is through an ego. And that ego that's been wounded, that's experienced things, whether they've been physical, psychological, what have you, that isn't really actually reality. It's not who you are as a divine being or who you are as a soul. And so as healers, I do think we do get to that place. We evolve to that place where we recognize that we can instantaneously, within a moment, transcend above and claim healing, because we don't even really actually need to be healed. We aren't even actually wounded. But again, I'm not trying to discount anybody's journey, because like I said, this is a necessary part of the process to sort of clear out the ego and go through what needs to be gone through, so that we can help others who come into our field who also are in a process of evolution and you know, need to go through that themselves. So that's what I have to say today about wounded healers, where I'm kind of thinking, and just how interesting it is when you sort of look at it from another dimension. And then I also want to talk about shamanism a little bit, so I'm going to actually do a separate video for that. So anyway, have a good day and keep staying tuned. I'm going to revamp my YouTube channel, I think, because I'm not talking so much anymore about writing as much as I am the spiritual things that are floating around in my head. So yeah, just stay tuned, keep watching. Thanks. Bye.